All right, everybody, welcome back to Ask Brojo Anything. Thank you guys so much for sending your questions through. You've given us plenty of fodder. We've got actually a pretty big wait list. So we'll try to get through two at least every week. And as always, prioritizing our gold members. And then if we've got time, get into the other questions. But yeah, if you want your questions answered, join gold. There's a total money back guarantee on your first month, so you can just try it out for a month, and if you don't like it, you can bail. If you do like it, you can stay. And part of that is getting your questions answered by us wise old men. So we've got a guy on the sidelines of his family watching a family member manipulate and abuse and hurt other family members, essentially using her child as a kind of pawn in this game to control her parents. This guy is the sister. So she will essentially get her parents to do whatever she wants by threatening to take the child away from them, then using them for babysitting, that kind of thing, going back and forth. Plus, there's a whole lot more going on. So he's frustrated that the parents put up with this. He's frustrated with the sister. He's confronted the parents, but not the sister yet. It sounds like he sees his sister as kind of quite manipulative and maybe narcissistic or something, kind of extreme. She insists on staying in an abusive relationship, and the son, the young child involved in this, has to, view all of that. Then he's also seeing that the grandmother, his mother, is maybe making choices for the child that he doesn't agree with. One such choice is he was homeschooled, and you can see a lot of pressure from the grandparents to do the same, and he feels like that was really a bad move for him socially. And you can see this kind of thing where he feels that choices are being made for the child that he doesn't agree with and that he thinks are wrong. He feels kind of powerless, impotent to help, very frustrated, very sure of what's right and wanting to intervene and so on. What we've got is that kind of classic situation where you're watching people you care about. Not only are they being harmed, or at least they appear to be, but they're also making stupid decisions, and you're kind of powerless to watch as a child possibly gets damaged by all of this. Very familiar situation for a lot of people, especially when we're talking about family or close friends. But some people feel this way even about watching total strangers live out their lives. So, Mike, what are your first thoughts on this one?
I gotta say, yeah, it's such a challenging situation to see people in this kind of relationship dynamic. I think one of the best aspects of this particular situation is that the guy who sent this in clearly sees that both ends of the relationship are to blame for where the relationship's at. Blame's a harsh word here. I mean, both ends are responsible. So while it's the sister who is doing the manipulation, the parents are fully supporting and enabling and encouraging it through their reaction or lack of reaction. That's very challenging. I hadn't actually read, that was at the bottom of the message. My first thought was, well, you need to talk to the parents. They're the ones that are enabling this. But clearly he's already done that. In this kind of situation, the thing I have to keep reminding myself is that we're talking about people here. You can't change someone who doesn't want to be changed. As coaches, we probably know this better than most because we work with a lot of people who say they want to be changed, but aren't actually willing to change their worldviews or confront their fears or put in self-investment that's needed for that change to happen. So the best you can do in a situation like this is bring it to light. All you can do is bring it up, confront the problem, make it clear that you're being emotionally affected by this situation. Make it clear that everyone is being emotionally affected by the situation. And essentially, I would treat it as basically a family sit down and confrontation where you just call out all the different angles of the situation non-judgmentally, but basically say, look how toxic this is. Look how it's affecting me and my wife. We don't want to even come to Christmas. Look how it's affecting your child. What's going to happen in a few years from now? Look how unhappy mom and dad are. Look how unhappy sis is. Look at all these things going on. Can we do this better? Beyond that, it's a struggle. You just basically have to sit back and let things fall where they may, and hope for the best, and be there to help support the family as they try to iron out their own dynamic challenges. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, look, the main thing I think for us to recognize is just how difficult this situation is to deal with psychologically. Like I said, everybody's got a version of this, even if it's just watching a stranger. You know, I've seen somebody like smack their kid in the head at the supermarket, and just some part of me wants to like go, nah, dude, that's not a good way to raise a kid. And this other part of me goes, well, it's none of my business. And this internal battle goes on, and it gets, the closer you are to the people involved, the harder it is to define that difference of, is this my battle or not? When it's your nephew, does that mean you are now obliged to intervene in some way? Are you allowed to force yourself in this situation? There are no right or wrong answers here. There are no guidelines from above as to how this is supposed to be handled. But what we can see is, if we take a philosophical perspective of the situation, is when you get out of the forest and can see the trees, or whatever that saying is, we've got a situation that is not under your control. That's the key thing to recognize here. You may, as Mike identified, there is a healthy intention of intervention. There's a way to try and have a positive influence on this, but ultimately they could resist against that totally, tell you to go fuck yourself. It might even get worse as a reaction. They might even resist just to spite you. So ultimately, the frustration comes from deep down knowing, I can't control this. I might have to witness a child be raised improperly and not be able to do anything about that, a child I love and care about. Mike's kind of identified where I'd go with this, so I'm really just repeating him here, which is the only outsource you've got here for all that frustration is honesty. There is a big difference between tolerance and acceptance. Now, acceptance is understanding that things are outside of your control and coming to peace with that. Tolerance is putting up with something, and it's not the same. So tolerance in this situation would be keeping your mouth shut and just letting it happen and not speaking up and not confronting anybody and not getting uncomfortable. Or it might even be running away from the situation and not speaking your mind. Acceptance means knowing, even if I speak my mind, things might not change. I may have no effect, but I need to speak my mind for my own sake. I need to know that I've expressed the truth as best I can. And therefore, if this all goes to shit, I know I did everything I could. Because expressing yourself honestly is all you can do in this situation. Now, there are some exceptions. If you're to witness a situation where the law is being broken, or there is some authority legally to get involved, then that's a different conversation. But this isn't one of those. Unfortunately, being manipulative and sneaky is not against the law. And depending on the situation, but even being in an abusive relationship does not necessarily mean that you can intervene legally with the child, though I would be keeping an eye on that. One thing I would do in this situation is, if I saw it heading towards crossing that line, I'd make it clear to people what I'm going to do if the line is crossed. And I'd be very clear, I don't care if everyone hates me, I'll do the right thing. For example, if I find out that the child has been witness to physical abuse, I will call child services and get them involved. If I find out that the partner is hit, if I find out my sister's hit by a partner, I will call the police and report it. I'll make it clear, there'll be no tolerance on my part. Now, I know that doing those things might not fix the situation, but I will not let someone drag me into their compromised value world. That's the key here, is understanding all you can do in the situation. Maintain your own integrity and not allow them to drag you down into the mud where they're playing. But they may all hate you for it, and that's the price you're going to have to pay.
Yeah, I think that's a very key point, is to recognize that half the problem here is that your sister is being enabled. The last thing you want to do is be part of that enabling force. So setting boundaries very clearly, exactly the way Dan established, is a very, very powerful way to do this. Say, look, this is bullshit. I can see the bullshit going on. I'm not going to allow the bullshit to become harmful to my nephew or to my own family or to my parents. I'm going to watch out for all of you because this is my aspect of responsibility in this situation. So your goal is to make certain that they know where the lines are and what your values are. I think that also goes very importantly into the question of, should you even get involved here? You know, Dan said that it's not, there are no laws from above, that this is your problem to deal with. You'll see strangers out on the street all the time doing things that you disapprove of. That doesn't mean that you get to intervene or make things right in your eyes. And that's a challenge that we all deal with all the time. But when it comes to your family, the thing that really matters here is where your core values lie in this situation. The fact that you feel responsible to do something, or that you're even asking that question, what can I do? Is there anything I can do to improve this situation? Is there anything I can do to help protect my nephew? That says something about who you are as a person. And I think that that's the most important thing that you can go deeper into, is you being your authentic self as part of this family means that you probably will have to confront them at some point in order to just be you. It's not about the sense of responsibility to anyone in particular, except to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing to look at is, you provide certain privileges with your presence, with being kind to people, and so on. These are privileges that can be withdrawn for bad behavior. Now, it's not the same as punishment. So punishment would be to retaliate, to take vengeance in some way, to try and hurt them for hurting you or for hurting another person. Removal of privileges simply means that somebody does not get the best you unless they earn it. And they will only get the minimal version of you if they're not earning it. So, for example, if you tend to be supportive and kind and helpful to your family, all that gets taken away if they engage in these acts. And this is all clearly discussed with them. Like, here are the boundaries. When you guys behave like this, I will react this way, just so that you're prepared. Just like I said before about, I'll call the police if I hear about violence. You can also say things like, look, I'm not going to come home for Christmas if you guys are going to keep behaving like this, or I will not call you every week if you guys are going to complain about something that you refuse to change. There's this kind of removal of privileges, like, I will not reward or enable you. You do not get the best of me if you disrespect me or you breach values in front of me. Another element I think Mike was hinting at here, and one of the toughest things we ever have to do in our life, it's what Sam Harris calls choosing the trench you want to die in. Especially if people are looking for meaning and purpose in the world, we come to a decision like, what am I willing to die for? What is my battle? And for some people, it might be climate change. For guys like me and Mike, it's, confidence issues. There's enemies that we choose that we decide that's the one we're going to battle. You see people very obviously with this, say vegans, for example, or even mixed martial artists. They literally want to battle other people, or maybe violence itself is the demon they want to overcome. You've got to decide what trench you're going to die in. What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to stand for? And something like this is a poor choice. To choose an area where you have almost no control, no autonomy, it's none of your business, is an awful choice for the trench you want to die in, because it's just going to be misery and frustration. Now, there is potential in there. If you don't like the idea of children being harmed in general, that could be a good trench to die in. You could become an advocate for anti-violence campaigns. You could run a blog that teaches good parenting techniques or how to deal with manipulative people and so on. You could help fight this battle at a general level. But this particular battle, the way it's happening right now, if you were to make that your sole focus in life, you're going to end up probably quite miserable. So it's hard. Mike and I have talked about this before. There's almost nothing harder than trying to coach someone through family-related issues. Most people can be built up to confidence where they can walk away from strangers or friends or even a career. But trying to get people to walk away from a family that's toxic is, God, it's next to impossible. It really is. So to this day, I'm still struggling to figure out the solutions for what happens when being around your family makes you compromise your principles, yet you're unwilling to walk away from your family. It's a dilemma I have yet to solve.
Yeah, that's very true, and I've experienced a bit of that myself as well. Dan, I got some distortion in your video feed for the past couple minutes while you were chatting. I'm not sure if that was my end or yours, but I really liked the discussion. Dan was talking about Sam Harris and choosing the trench that you want to die in, what you're committing yourself to, really thoroughly understanding the why you're going to engage in this situation will help you direct your actions and your attention very well. There's one other thing I want to call out here, which I think has surfaced in my own life numerous times, is the reality that you've been holding back on expressing how much this bothers you. Now, you've clearly, in the message that you wrote, have confronted your parents, told them a bit about how you feel, and they seem to understand fairly well where you stand, although it hasn't swayed their approach or them enabling your sister. You haven't yet talked to your sister about this at all. There's a couple risks to that. One is you haven't planted any seeds yet that challenge her worldview. Until you do that, there's no chance for change, at least not as a result of you helping her change. The other side, though, is that this is still building for you. This is, from an emotional standpoint, this is something that's going to make you angrier and angrier and angrier and more annoyed until the point that you actually get around to confronting her is going to be very hard to hold back and very hard to go into that situation with a clear head and a clear heart and really help her see what's going on. You'll be full of too much anger and resentment and anxiety. This is one of the key BROJO messages, is that the reason honesty is so important is that anytime you hide the truth of what you think or how you feel, it doesn't go away. It's still there. It's just hiding and building, locked in a closet, until one day when it has to come out and it just tears the room apart. You don't need that to happen. Even telling your sister, hey, I think mom and dad are pretty stressed about the fact that you've left them with, your son for another 3 weeks while you go away. I think they're not talking about it, but I think they're fairly stressed about it. Simply making observations from the sidelines helps them see and question what they're doing. It's unlikely anything will change, but those small steps of honesty need to happen, both so that your sister and your parents can see what honesty looks like, what it looks like to actually call things out, and so that you don't keep building that emotional stress. For you to be helpful here means you actually stepping into that situation as honestly and authentically as you can every single opportunity that you get.
Absolutely. I think that's the best point, is essentially what we're saying. Confront every time this bothers you. And it'll come out small, the right size for the confrontation at the time. Won't be a big puke like Mike says, where it all builds up and then you explode. The only final point I want to make on this, I bet if I was to talk to your sister, I'd get a different story. And if I was to talk to your parents, I'd get a different story again. There's an old kind of almost cliche, but a truism in Stoicism, which is that nobody does wrong willfully, that we're all ignorantly evil, so to speak. Odds are your sister thinks she's doing the right thing. Your parents think they're doing the right thing. You think you're doing the right thing. And you're all right and you're all wrong. It's possible that your sister's some twisted psychopath and enjoys manipulating everyone. It's far more likely that the behavior you're seeing in her is an insecure coping mechanism It's her trying to do the right thing as best she can, and the same with your parents. So there's a really good chance here that everybody's suffering in this situation. And as Mike and I have hinted, we believe honesty is the medicine for that suffering. If everyone can see what's really going on from everyone else's perspective, so not only tell, but listen. Why do you do this? What does it mean to you? What's the story? What's it look like from your point of view? Why do you think this is a good idea? How do you feel about it? If you can just open your ears to the idea, hey, maybe she's not evil, maybe she's in pain. Maybe she thinks something else is happening to what you think is happening. Maybe you're both wrong. That kind of perspective will give you the best possible chance of sorting this out. But you've got to go into it, as Mike says, willing for it to never be sorted out and to just express yourself for your own sake, for your own sanity. Yeah, what more can we say?
Yeah. And especially, if this does escalate into something more significant, where you even get counselors or law officials involved, or God forbid, someday have to go to court and pursue custody of your nephew, these are all possibilities. They do happen in rare cases. You don't want to go from 0 to 100. You really want to give everybody a chance to deal with the problem now before it continues to become worse. So your instinct to somehow do something and get involved in this and shine that flashlight around so everyone can see what you see is, I think, the right instinct here.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your questions. Keep sending them through. info@brojo.org if you want to send them through, or brojo.org/ask. There's a little form you can fill out there. And of course, get in touch with us anytime if we can help. And if you want your questions answered as a priority, join our gold membership and get all the perks and privileges there as well.